Good morning, every one of you. Welcome to Patch Tuesday updates from ManageEngine. Before I begin, I would like to confirm if you can hear my voice and view this presentation. Please acknowledge via chat. Thank you for your confirmation. This is Raj. So here is our quick agenda for our 30-minute session. As always, we are going to begin with the breakdown on Microsoft's Patch Tuesday updates on critical third-party applications. We'll also discuss about the possible impacts or effects on missing these patches. Finally, we will discuss how to proactively defend our network and secure our computers. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions during this presentation, you can feel free to post it in chat. I have an expert who would be answering your questions then and there. So here we begin. If you would be wondering what is in the limelight, of course, with a lot of updates on iOS 11 and issues on Equifax, everybody's focus is more updates, releases. However, in terms of Microsoft and Patch Tuesday, I would like to insist on the same updates or the same points that we discussed the previous time. Microsoft has resumed support for Delta packages. If you're running Windows version 1607, this should be glad news for you. Microsoft has resumed support for every single time you'll have to patch a computer, you'll have to download all the data. The data would be very huge. It would consume a lot of bandwidth, and patching your entire network. Assume you have 10,000 computers, patching Windows computers was quite challenging. So now Microsoft has for one complete month. Assume you have patched your computers during the month of August. So when you want to patch the computers during September, you're not going to download the complete patch, whereas you're going to download only the difference in the data. That is, your patching process becomes easy, simpler, and you can make it efficient for when you really want to patch, a huge set of computers. So this is the first piece of information. Do remember, this is Delta packages, which is good enough only for 1 month. If you fail to patch your computers for more than a month, then you'll have to download the cumulative method where the complete data should be downloaded and deployed in order to patch your Windows computers. So the second significant factor that we would like to insist on is Microsoft stops support for security Here are a few facts which could actually give you a better understanding. So version 1507 of Windows, which is claimed as Windows 10, was actually released during the year 2015, and the end of support has been officially declared on the 9th of May 2017. Okay, so which means it is the right time for you to ensure that you update your computers if you're running Windows 10 1507. Be it WannaCry or one more cyber attack, to bring in surprises. So let's step out a little proactive, and that is the reason this is on our flashboard for the second time this month. We did specify the same information during the month of August. However, we would like to repeat it for the audience who are listening it for the first time. This would be very vital. Please do ensure that all your computers are up to date. Okay, now let's get on. Let's move on with more details about the patching for September. So this time it's massive. Unlike the previous, where we had around 400 plus patches released, this time we have 700 plus patches which are released by Desktop Central in the month of September, which means since the previous Patch Tuesday update, we have over 754 patches which are released and supported by ManageEngine. Here is a breakup. These patches are grouped here for better understanding. You have 6 bulletins, 135 patches, 59 updates, 82 vulnerabilities, and the possible impacts are 7. If you wonder if the sum of these numbers are not going to match up with this 754, the number of patches are 754. However, in terms of updates or vulnerabilities, it is grouped. Assume I say there is one vulnerability, that there could be more than one patch released for it. So 135 would have multiple versions, which is applicable for various operating systems or probably various versions within the same operating system, be it for 32-bit or 64-bit. So that is how it works. We'll also look at it from a different perspective. What are the impacts? Here is a list in terms of impact. So these are the 7 impacts, that is defense in depth, denial of service, elevation of privilege, information disclosure, remote code execution, security feature bypass, and spoofing. So these are the impacts which could be possible if you fail to patch your computers with these updates. One other data. So here is a number in terms of severity. So you've got 20 patches which are critical, really critical. These 20 patches might fall into n number of applications. One patch might be good enough for more than one application because the patch is actually associated with a component rather than an application. So when you patch one particular component, the same component might be used in multiple applications. So there are 20 critical patches. Then you have 10 moderate patches, 14 patches which are rated low, and a huge number, 73 patches which are rated important. So we'll have to ensure that we don't miss out on patching any of these updates. Let's not consider that the patch is low, the patch is moderate. It's always recommended that you stay on top of your vulnerabilities, ensure that all your computers are patched and kept secure. We're discussing about the patches in terms of vulnerabilities, in terms of impacts. Let's take a look from a different perspective. What are the applications within? A short list here, and of course the significant or most impacted applications here. So the first one, which is top rated here, is Microsoft Office. When I say Office, it includes multiple versions of Microsoft Office. If I'm going to split it, so put together, it is Microsoft Office. which is topping the list. Then comes .NET Framework, and of course Windows. Windows here represents multiple operating systems, multiple flavors. Then comes Internet Explorer, Microsoft's Exchange Server, and one third-party patch, which is to be noted here is Adobe Flash Player. So I'm sure this graph should give you a very clear understanding on what you can design. Say there are a lot of dependencies where Adobe Flash Player is being used. So when there is a concern with .NET Framework, there are a lot of applications which actually work hand in hand with .NET Framework, which leverages or which is actually using .NET Framework. So that will signify the real need for patching. And when a browser like Internet Explorer is vulnerable, there is nothing that I need to explain you, because you should be aware of the consequences when one of a browser is compromised. Okay, and not to forget the operating system itself, that is Windows, be it for servers or for desktops. When one of your operating system is vulnerable, this is high time that we'll have to go back and get this fixed as soon as possible. All right, I'm not going to count down on Exchange Server, since all your data, all your office and business critical data lies on your server. So it is really, really significant that we don't compromise any of these applications from being patched. All right, let's move out with more details. Here's a list that we just went through. Let's begin with Microsoft Office. Okay, so there are several patches with several severities. There are few patches which are marked critical, and few which are important, few which are low. As exposed so far in public: defense in depth, elevation of privilege, information disclosure, execution. We have been discussing enough on the impact, because a regular visitor for this webinar who takes this webinar regularly, we have discussed enough on these. However, we'll also try exploring few of them in detail. So here are the components or the areas which are affected. Component which is primarily affected here is objects in memory. So certain applications, when there is data which needs to be stored in the memory and they have certain difficulties in storing the data on the buffer, that is wherein it is where attackers try intruding the data or try hacking its authenticity. So memory corruption or memory leakage is really, really critical. You have a lot of CVs which are listed here. Let us see what could be the pull exploits. So when a data is being stored, this vulnerability exploits various handlings, like fails to properly handle objects in memory, which means the data which is stored is not secure, or the data is not stored in the memory, instead it's stored in the cache memory. Which is more vulnerable, and start executing some remote codes. It could be arbitrary codes, it could be taking away the data on the memory, and there are even possibilities where an attacker can gain the access of the user who has logged in to the particular computer. Assume the user has administrative privileges. In that case, there is nothing more that I can explain you. This might lead to cross-site scripting, or of course there are n number of possibilities which the user can exploit from there on, which means the attacker can gain access with administrative rights and creep in into your network and perform unimaginable damage. Application. Here we are going to talk about Microsoft Windows. Again, you have updates which are rated critical, important, and moderate. Impacts, there is a huge list. Denial of service, which is in fact going to affect your business. An authenticated user might not have access to a business critical data. Elevation of privilege, which again means a user, a normal user, can actually duplicate himself, clone himself, elevate his privilege as an administrative user. Information exposure, which means all your corporate data or important data is at risk. Remote code execution, I'm sure WannaCry and Petya, these would have been great examples for remote code execution. You know what happened as a result of those? Security feature bypass and spoofing. Let's see the affected components. Here is a huge list too. It starts with GDI, that is graphic device interface, and of course the list goes on to Windows kernel guards, again leakage in memory, Windows kernel content, policy violations. So these elements or these components of Windows are compromised. Here is a huge list of CVEs which are supported, the never-ending list, and at last here comes the assessment. So when we think about the possible exploits, it starts with execution of arbitrary codes, a man-in-the-middle attack, Bluetooth, it goes endless. Might be I'll have to repeat the whole stuff over. There's a lot of CVEs, a lot of vulnerabilities. Something that is particular or specific with this Bluetooth driver spoofing vulnerability is that this attack happens internally. I mean, the attacker cannot disturb you from an external network. This attack will actually start as an internal attack, and of course the exploit would actually, be hazardous. So these are the possibilities. Let's move on to the next application. The next is Microsoft Edge. Severity, we have critical, important, moderate, and low. So what are the possible impacts? Information disclosure, remote code execution, security bypass, spoofing. Here is a repeated list. So components which are impacted or affected, objects in memory, clipboard events. So these are associated, as I said earlier, whenever there is a problem in handling objects in memory, the default data is stored in clipboard or temporary memory like cache memory, to perform certain operations. Content security policy, which is being compromised here. And there are even situations where Microsoft Edge phrases HTTP responses. Even though you're running on a secure HTTPS mode, there are possibilities where the data can leak on HTTP response. So the list of CVEs that we could find here. Exploit assessment. So the attacker can actually exploit the user's computer or the data. This could actually grow up to an extent where the attacker can start installing programs himself, probably the data on the machine. It could be either on the same computer or the computer to which the user has access to. The data can be viewed, modified, or deleted. There is also a possibility where the attacker can host a specially crafted website and deceive the user, and redirect the request to the specially crafted website. And there, again, it leads to arbitrary code execution. And of course, by now, the options or the vulnerabilities exposed are endless. Now we are moving out to Microsoft's .NET framework. The severity here is important, and the impact is remote code execution. The component that is affected is .NET framework, process, untrust input. So it's more about this particular component wherever untrusted input is being compromised. Here's a CD ID, and the possible exploit could be creation of new accounts with full user privilege. So the attacker can create new accounts with the complete rights. Again, he can install programs, view or modify data on the machine or on the machine where the user, the logged on user, has privilege to. So this is all the more critical. Here we move out to Internet Explorer. Again, we have a huge list of CVEs. Severity ranges from critical, important, moderate, and low. Impact, information disclosure, remote code execution, and spoofing. Being a web browser, information disclosure, I'm sure this could, explain it all by themselves. Affected component is more about handling the website, website components. Possible exploits. User can be tricked to visit a fake website. Any request that is being passed can be actually redirected to a fake website. The hacker can also, track specific information even from your domain and execute arbitrary codes, which is again all self-explanatory, which means this could cause unimaginable damage too. So we are trying to discuss about the extreme possible cases. We seriously wish none of us experience any of those vulnerabilities. That is wherein we are trying to be more proactive in, a little bit cautious on be a more proactive in getting these patches updated as and when. Adobe Flash Player, severity is critical. Remote code execution is the impact, and affected component is again memory corruption. There is only one CV ID for that. So what could be the possibility? The possibility of exploit is execution of arbitrary codes, which is just, the gateway for any attacker to creep into your network. Whenever I say execution of arbitrary codes or remote code execution, that's not just the beginning. Probably, the options are endless. That is exactly what I can quote here. Next is Microsoft's Exchange Server. The severity quoted here is important, and information disclosure is the primary impact that they have disclosed here. So the component or the specific address on a local network is compromised from a client to the internet. So here is one particular CVID which actually brings in the fix. When you imagine about the possibilities for exploit, unintended information disclosure, as we discussed in the very beginning, your server is compromised, your data is compromised. So anybody your data anytime, your business is really at critical risk. So you'll have to ensure that you patch your Exchange server as early as possible so that you don't compromise on any of your business data, business critical data. Okay. So these are the list of security updates related to Office. I'm just sharing them here, probably for you to get to know. And discussing about each of them in detail is going to be really, really difficult. So the next is about non-security updates. Okay, here is a huge list too, followed by third-party updates for Windows. Now that we have been discussing enough on the patches, possible vulnerabilities, or you term it as exploits, which could be, which we assume the possible assessment, right? Let's discuss more about how to secure your network and how to be proactive in handling the situation. So for the existing customers, you should be familiar with our approach. If you're using desktop for the first time, let me take you to the product and give you a quick overview, for a couple of minutes and help you out on how to secure yourself from these vulnerabilities. We have closely spent around 20 minutes possible impacts. Now imagine, what are you supposed to do to secure your network? If you are a customer of Desktop Central, or be it you're using Desktop Central, all that you will have to do is just to sit back and relax. Yes, I mean it. You can simply sit back and relax if you have configured an automated patch deployment task. That is all. So an automated patch deployment task is what we are going to take a closer look at. Here we go. This is how the product console looks. This is Desktop Central and integrated. Okay, and I'm going to create an automate patch deployment task. I'm going to create one for Windows. I can name this task at my own convenience. I'm going to say scan computers, download the missing patches, and deploy them appropriately. There are 4 options. One which allows you just to scan. Another one is to scan and download the patches. The third one is to scan, download, draft them ready in case you want to, deploy it based on your requirement. You can make it immediately. And the last one, the final one, is to scan, download, deploy the patches, the missing patches. Severities and applications is where you can choose what type of applications needs to be patched. Assume you want to patch security updates. Yes, you can go ahead and do that. You want to ignore low priority updates. You can just go back and disable it. However, we recommend you to ensure that you patch, So you also have options where you can choose service packs or roll-up updates or optional updates. So apart from this, you also have third-party applications which you can actually choose based on the priority. Either you want to deploy them or you want to ignore based on the severity, you can go ahead and customize it. Okay. So once you choose it, in case you want to specify any particular application which needs to be excluded from patching, you can well go ahead and do that. Assume I want one business critical application. That application runs on a legacy, application, and I never wanted the patch to be updated for that particular application. Yes, you can go ahead and exclude it right here. So here you go. Here is a process where you can approve the patches before the deployment. You can also create a test group so that the patches are tested in your own environment. Assume you're running many business critical servers and you never wanted to deploy a patch right away to your production. In that case, these patches will be downloaded. These patches will be deployed on a test machine which you define in your network. Okay, and once the patches are deployed successfully, you can actually provide them a buffer time, be it 5 working days or 8 business days, after which you feel that the patch is secure, it doesn't misbehave, then the patch will be automatically approved and rolled out to your complete network, which means you can be rest assured the patch is not going to misbehave and this is not going to impact your business critical servers at any given point of time. All right. So this is one significant part which I would like to insist on. Deployment settings. Let me create a deployment policy here. As the term defines, I'm just going to click on this option to create a deployment policy. All right, here we go. I can specify a name for the policy. Deployment policy allows you to customize your deployment. So when I say customizing deployment, you can specify when should the deployment happen. When doesn't represent just the time interval. There are a lot of other factors too, as you can look here. Assume you want to deploy patches to Adobe Flash, or say you wanted to patch Java applications. Most of the time, Java applications might be in use. So you can choose to deploy those patches during system startup or refresh cycle. A computer is rebooted immediately. Okay, and you can also prefer when should the deployment happen. Should it happen during the first week, probably the last week, be it you want to deploy it during non-business hours, you can, option here is left as 24-hour window, which means anytime. However, you can specify it based on your own requirements. What if few of my computers are turned off? No worries. You can simply enable this option, which allows you to turn on a computer. A computer would be turned on before patching the particular application. So you can also configure notification settings, which means this is exactly what I was talking about. You can actually configure the settings, which allows you, to perform the deployment. You can notify the users about the deployment if you want. Else you can also configure the notification settings, which will actually send messages. You'll be receiving emails to administrators week on week stating how many computers were patched appropriately, how many computers missed critical patches. So all you got to do is just to sit back and relax, just look at your report and identify that your machines are secure. So one last policy, you can go ahead and configure your reboot policy, which means you can choose to reboot all the computers. You can also choose to exclude servers from reboot, and everything is completely customizable. You want to shut down the machine after reboot, you can well go ahead and do that. So all you do here is create a policy, and of course, let's go back to the previous view. You can associate this policy to your automated patch deployment task. Okay, once it is done, you're all done, you're all set. You're simply going to click on create and deploy this package to your target computers. We would recommend you to deploy this to your complete domain or work group, which means all the computers which are a part of your work group or your domain will be patched periodically. Even if a computer is going to be added newly into your Active Directory, these configurations, these patch configurations will automatically be enforced on them. And you can network, or which reaches your network, will definitely be patched, and you can get the report every week on week. So if you're an existing user of Desktop Central, this Patch Tuesday information is just news for you, just to be proactive and updated with the latest information. There is nothing that you'll have to do manually if you have configured an automated patch deployment task. All right, let's now head back to the presentation. So these are the updates for third party and Mac. And what are the offerings? Desktop Central, as we saw it right now, is an integrated solution. In case you're being very keen with just the patching part and we don't want any other features, any additional features, in that case you can go for Patch Manager Plus, which is an exclusive patch management solution handling patches for Windows, Mac, Linux, and third party. We also have offerings for service providers, and the most interesting part is Patch Connect Plus. Assume there are customers who have a long-term license, or they have signed up with Microsoft for 5 years. Probably they couldn't come out of it fun of, or they feel that the management doesn't allow them to come out of Microsoft for some. Patch Connect Plus, which is actually a third-party patching tool. In other terms, we offer you patching third-party applications leveraging Microsoft's SCCM. We don't require any additional infrastructure. You can choose which applications needs to be patched, and of course Patch Connect Plus integrates with SCCM and ensures that all your computers are patched, not just with your Microsoft updates but also your third-party applications. So here we come to the end of this training. Or you got any questions, you can feel free to post it in chat. So at the end of this presentation, there'll be a survey. Once you close this presentation, you'll be prompted with a survey. You can rate us on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 being the best. You can feel free to post your suggestions so that we can optimize, we can improve and customize this webinar for your convenience. I appreciate all of your time. Thank you for your participation. Good day. Bye-bye.